Today we're going to be talking about me making everybody mad with one of my latest videos, as well as the files, and you know what I mean by the files, but just a little bit. Can I have a kiss? Thank you. You want to do a sound check? Wow, that's some sound check. Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Ty Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Ty Rivera. I'm your host, Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, I had to keep it together because I really wanted to laugh right there at the beginning, and I was trying to stop myself because you guys know I mess up the intro almost every week, and I was like, let's see if I can get through it. And in my head, I was just going a little bit crazy because I was trying to, like, my inner monologue was, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, which I know now that I have enough of you that watch me regularly in the podcast, because if you notice, the podcast doesn't really get a lot of views, and I'm completely fine with that. By the way, drop a super thanks if you can, like the video. The only reason I say drop the super thanks if you can, it's not necessary, you don't have to, there's nothing going on over here. I just tell you because these views ain't paying the bills. I'm such a fool, but it's funny. It's funny to me in a way because it's like I have to be honest, you know. But like I said, I don't care because that's not the purpose of these videos. The purpose of these videos of my podcast, Unbothered, is really for the people that really support me. It's to give you guys something that everybody else doesn't get. People have access to it. Anybody can watch it. But it really is for the people that are really down with me and what I do. And also because for me, it kind of does serve a little bit as therapy. And you would never know it by listening to it because I don't try to be super sappy or whatever, you know, and like really try to unload on you guys like that. But there is something very cathartic and also therapeutic for me about just being able to speak and not having to worry about editing or putting in extra media and stuff for you guys to really pay attention to. It's just me talking to you guys. And last week when I said I was going to Golden Corral, I definitely went to Golden Corral, and it was so good. And Hunter had asked me in the comments if I was going to be, or in the chat, I should say, which if you're watching this while it's the chat, hey everybody, thank you for actually tuning in and getting to chat with me in the actual chat during premiere. But I like, there's certain times like that, like when I'm at cheat day and stuff, that I just don't want to be bothered with having to record anything or take pictures of anything or do anything that's related to social media. And Sundays can be a particularly busy day for me because some days I put out the podcast and I put out a regular video on Sunday, and that really does add up to a lot of me having to not only edit but upload, and there's a bunch of stuff that goes with it that's on the not so fun side. And so Sundays, by the time that I'm done with the chat, then I'm usually ready to just completely unplug. But I really do have fun in the chat, even though you guys do make me hungry. Last week, though, we were all pretty good. Hunter asked last week that I have some dark chocolate in memory of her son who passed, and it was going to be his heavenly birthday the following day, that Monday. And so I did have a full chocolate bar. It was I can't remember the brand, but it was like a $7, like $6.50, $6.49 was what it was at the Fry's, which is our local grocery store that most people go to here. But anyway, I just got through watching, I don't know if you guys watch Soft White Underbelly, but that's something I watch on YouTube, and he just does these really candid interviews, and they're usually just the guy, Mark Alita, I think is his last name. He does these interviews in a lot of cases with street people. He's over near Skid Row in LA, which I tell you guys all the time, I lived in LA right near MacArthur Park, which is right near Skid Row. It's technically between like Koreatown and then, you know, Skid Row is on the opposite side. Basically walking distance if you felt like walking through those areas, which I look like me, and I can get away with being anywhere and truly being unbothered. Like, people just don't mess with me, you know, and I don't say that in any way like I'm a tough guy or anything. I just happen to have a look that makes it so people don't really mess with me, you know. People will, because I by far don't think that everybody's afraid of me, especially in LA, you know, like you're dealing with actual MS-13 members and people that are really, really hardcore. And so it's not like they're afraid of me, but just what happens with me and a lot of people that people would consider like scary characters, in a lot of cases, they'll assume that I'm the same type. And so we just keep it at a very neutral, you know, I don't get punked out by them or them trying to start with me. And I also obviously don't start with them, because why would I want it? I'm just a guy doing the stuff that I have to do, and I'm thankful that I have a look that keeps people at arm's length in a lot of cases. So, but what I was talking about is Soft White Underbelly. Mark Alita is doing these interviews with the survivors from the files, and everybody knows what I mean by the files. I'm not trying to get this video flagged in any kind of way, so we'll just leave it at the files. The guy that had the island that's been dominating the news, but this particular woman that he interviewed today, her name was Haley Robson. And, well, not he interviewed her today, obviously. It was the episode that I watched today, because he's had different survivors on, and he said he'll have as many survivors on as he can. Like, once a week, he's going to be putting out a video that's him just interviewing the survivors. And I always like his interviews. I started watching them several years ago when I was still in Las Vegas. I remember talking to one of the bartenders at one of the bars that we used to do an open mic at. It was called Champagne's, which shut down, and it was legendary. Like, Frank Sinatra used to go there back in the day, and that was literally walking distance. It was me and Bijou's date night when I still had my puppy Bijou before she went to heaven. My little Bijou, I miss her very much all the time. And there's one particular song that I always think of her when it's on, and because I've listened to it so much, whenever I put on a random playlist on YouTube, it'll always be in the playlist, because, you know, the algorithm knows that I love that song. I've listened to it so many times since she was still alive, you know. And so but yeah, so so I've been watching that show forever, and it's called Soft White Underbelly. And I would tell you, if you only watch one of them, do watch the one with Haley Robson, because I think, and one of the reasons I don't really talk about the files, because I've had people ask me about that. You know, people are like, why don't you talk about the files? One, because it's so hard for me to talk about those things, because YouTube will, in a lot of cases, suppress my videos if I talk about that, because I've got such a real viewpoint of that kind of stuff, you know, because like, that's why I say to watch Haley Robson's interview, is because she brings up some things that are very much in line with the kind of stuff that I would say if I were to talk about that. And it's like, people don't understand that there's different things people want from different people. And I've told you guys about that before. Like, when I was in S-Work, what people liked about me was that I was very innocent looking at that time. I had one tattoo, which was the first tattoo I ever got in my life. And it's an Ankh. I don't remember how to spell it. Somebody corrected me when I spelled it phonetically when somebody asked me what my first tattoo was. But yeah, I've got an Ankh, which is an Egyptian cross. It's the cross that you may have seen that has like the circle at the top. And so I have an Ankh on my shoulder. And that was the first tattoo I ever had. And I got it when I was young enough that my parents had to sign. My dad, if I remember correctly, my dad went with me so that he could sign. I have the best parents in the world, which would some would say that that's not having the best parents in the world. But, so I don't remember, because, in Arizona, I don't know if it's still like that now, but when I was younger, I know I was well before 18 when I got that tattoo. And my dad just had to go with me. A parent had to go with you and sign off on it, show their ID. You give your ID as well, to prove that you're their child. And so that's what we did. And, but yeah, so she mentions that too. And there was an interview with another girl that I saw, woman that I saw last week, girl at the time that all of it happened, for her as well. And she was talking about the fact that Jeffrey didn't like them to be on any substances. But then there are girls in the other cities that said that, they were on substances, that they were given substances. And so, that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, is that when you're dealing with those kinds of people, there's different things that they want from different people and different ways that they see different people, the different ways that they see the victims. And a lot of people really don't understand that. And I think that Haley Robson did a really good job of kind of explaining that. And if you watch them, you'll see, if you watch the different interviews, because I've seen maybe 4 of them now, so 4 different victims, you'll see that it was different experiences that they went through. Some were similar, but it was different experiences. And there's definitely things that carry over. But I don't talk about a lot of that stuff, because what you find in these kinds of situations, and I talked about it with the Me Too situation, is that it really is like pulling a string on a sweater, where the sweater is just going to completely unravel. And that's what's going to happen if they really were to go into it and really were to release all the names. It would not be partisan in any way. And that's what really keeps people, because if you notice that the public will act like they really want these released, every name, you'll see people saying that all the time. And I believe some of them, a very small fraction, truly do believe that to their core. But I believe that the reality of that would shatter a lot of people, because what you'll find is a lot of the people that you respected, a lot of the people that you even in some cases saw as heroes, weren't what you thought they were. And you'll see examples of that in people whenever there's like a whistleblower situation. With me in the comedy world, there's times that I've completely exposed things about the comedy world that the average comedy fan would tell you that they're very much against. They would 100% tell you that should not be happening in comedy. Joke thief, let's take it there, which is kind of a vanilla and a very safe thing to talk about, as far as not having to get too controversial. Joke thievery. Okay, everybody in comedy, Carlos Mencia got in trouble for it. Joe Rogan, ruined Carlos Mencia's whole career over it, which really Carlos Mencia ruined his own career because he shouldn't have been doing that. And for years and years and years, everybody knew he was doing that. Everybody let him get away with it because nobody wanted to make any waves, which I have a theory about why Joe Rogan did that. I don't want to go into that right now because that's not the point of what we're doing. But there was a situation where a comedian actually stole one of my jokes, and I tried to talk to him about it. He didn't want to hear it. So then I went to the club owner. The club owner was like, yeah, go ahead. Because, you know, I told him, like, I told the club owner, because we were working for the same club. And my thing with the club owner was just like, just tell him to cut it out. Like, I'm not expecting you to not hire him anymore. I'm not expecting I'm not expecting him to be canceled. Really, I don't even want to be public about it. Because at that point, it was between me and the guy that did it, because I approached him first, person to person. He said he didn't want to hear it. Literally, that's what he did. And I tried to force the conversation. But at a point, you're going to look crazy and you're going to look like you're trying to start something. So I wasn't trying to be truly unprofessional about it. So I went to the club owner and was like, hey, just have a talk with him, because this shouldn't be happening. And it was on the Vegas scene. I did a video about it way back then. But that's only when I had audio. I wasn't doing like the video podcast, but you can find it. It's called like Tricks as a Joke Thief or something like that. You know me, I'm not, and it's on my main channel. You know me, I'm not exactly the king of subtlety when it comes to these kind of things. So I tell the club owner, and the club owner knows that I do that joke. Everybody knows I do that joke. You know, there was no question about that being my joke. Instead, because a lot of people liked him and liked to drink with him and party with him, and I haven't been drinking for years now. Like me getting drunk has been so long now, I can't even remember the last time that I was legitimately drunk. I want to say it had to be like maybe 2017. Maybe. No, it had to be before that. No, it might have been 2017 Cinco de Mayo, or maybe 2016 Cinco de Mayo, because I remember I got so drunk that I fell down the stairs of the place that I was living, and luckily didn't hurt myself. It's not like a tragic story where it's like, you know, I've met friends or had friends like that have like fallen downstairs or fallen on boats. I've had a few friends that have fallen on boats, but I've had friends that have had different, like, truly tragic situations where they've broken a leg. I've seen people really ruin their lives, or for a minute ruin their lives, you know, really put a crease in everything because they had some kind of accident when they were drunk. Fortunately, that did not happen with me, but I did literally fall down the stairs, and it was when I was walking my dogs, because I came home super drunk and I knew I had to walk my dogs, and I was so drunk that I don't even, like, it's the kind of thing where it was like an out of body in a way, you know, me falling down the stairs. It's like the next day I could barely remember it, and then I was just thankful to God that I had gotten back in my apartment with my two dogs. Like, that was one of my biggest fears when I had Bijou, because I was new to being a dog owner, and then for a while I had a dog named Jerry. And when I had Bijou and Jerry, I was always super worried that I would do something stupid when I was drunk or partying in some way, which I wasn't doing the hardcore at that time. I quit that years and years, like that's long, like 20 years or something like that. You know, it's been years and years since I've done like hardcore partying. But you know, like drinking, yeah, like I said, I think 2017 would be the last time that I was truly drunk. But my point is, I wasn't the guy that was going to be drinking with everybody, and that guy was, you know. So what happens is everybody turns on me, because I talked to the club owner about it, and the club owner was kind of pulling a, like, you know, I don't have time for this right now type of thing. And it's like, this guy's actually doing my joke. And he was known for stealing jokes before, but supposedly it had changed. That's a part of why we were friends. It had been several years since he had a scandal where he had been called out by several comedians for that and other stuff. But yeah, so what happened was, and I'll put a link somewhere up here. That's what I'll do. Yeah. Where you can like click the link, or I'll put it in the comments. That's what I'll do. I'm sure I have it on my other channel and you guys can watch that. Yeah, I'll put it as the pinned comment. But everybody turned on me, even though that's something that supposedly all comedians are against. You know, it was very few people that didn't like start blaming me. And the reason that they were mad at me was because I wasn't nice about the way I said it. But I had tried to handle it privately. And so what the owner of that club did was he was like, just do one of your videos. And he wasn't being at all facetious, or didn't sound like he was, but he told me, just do one of your videos, lay everything out like you do with all the evidence and stuff like that. I played a sound, because there was a point where, because I would record every set, I still do that a lot, record the audio from every set. And so there was a point where he's literally telling me how much he liked that joke right after I got off stage. And the only reason I even had that was because since I would record myself when I'd be getting off stage, or when I was on stage, when I got off stage, a lot of times I forget to turn my phone off. You know, that was very common. That's something that I've gotten a lot better at now. But, you know, it still happens sometimes where sometimes it'll be for a long time where it's like, you know, 2 hours later, I'll realize that, and I'll just be like, okay, I'll edit that out later, you know, all the talking part, because there's a lot of me talking to people backstage and just regular conversations that happened and stuff like that. So I remembered that I had it, so I went ahead and clipped that. I also clipped a point where I was doing the joke on stage and you could hear him in the background saying like, facts, you know, like that kind of thing. And so, and you can tell clearly that that's his voice. So I put it all on the video, and then the owner never bothered to listen to it. He later on admitted that to me, and I was like, well, then why'd you tell me to do that if you weren't going to listen to it anyway? Because he was like, and I'll listen to it and then I'll get back to you and stuff like that. So when I went to follow up with him, they made it seem like I was just starting trouble for nothing, which, like, our jokes, even though a lot of people think with stand-up comedy that that's something you'll hear when these kinds of things happen. People will be like, you all do the same jokes. No, we don't. Like, especially if you're a person like me, because the way that I write is very much in my voice. And that just happened to be one of the jokes that could be taken. And at the end of the day, it didn't ruin my life. It wouldn't have ruined my set. And me calling him out like that, there were enough people across the country that heard my story, you know, and watch my videos. Because a lot of comedians, like a lot of times at that time, a lot of the stuff that I did was kind of inside baseball, you know? And so a lot of comedians would listen to my stuff at that time. And so it wouldn't go out to a very wide audience. You know, I think that video has like 3,000 views or whatever. And like I said, it's only audio. But people, like comedians, would listen to my stuff. So, and in a lot of cases, influential comedians and comedians that actually mattered. And because a lot of people do respect what I do, even if they don't always like my antics, which most people have fun with my antics. That's another thing. A lot more than would publicly admit to it. And I know because they'll tell me, you know, and they'll show up at places that I'm hanging out. And so there's a bit of a folklore that goes with me and people. And I have fun with that part of my life too. You know, that's why when people try to be insulting with me about stand-up comedy online, if you've ever seen me deal with that kind of stuff, I don't care. And it's because I know that so many people in my industry do actually respect me and do actually have fun with even what some would consider the messy parts of me, which I don't consider that to be messy at all. Some people would, but it's like, no, joke thievery is supposed to be something that's serious to us. But my point is, because people like that person, suddenly then it wasn't a big deal for some of them. And that's the way. And then there's also the politics of it, you know, because he worked all the clubs, which I'm one of the people that convinced him to move to Vegas, which kind of bothered me at that point. You know, it's like, I really like harassed you to move here because I thought you would help the scene out. And then you come here and you're doing this kind of stupidity. And so, but like I said, people really did turn on me about that. And there have been a lot of times in my life where I've just seen that side of people, you know, like when I called out the stuff with Mothership. All of that stuff, if you ever listen to that video or watch that video, that's when I was doing full video. And that one got a lot of views. But everything I call out is all legitimate stuff. And people were still mad at me. Well, why were they mad at me? Because they liked or wanted to be in with like Tony Hinchcliffe and Joe Rogan. And so you have a lot of people that will say negative things and try to make it seem like I'm just being bitter and stuff. And it's like nothing that I'm saying in this video, though, is like just bitter stuff. It's all legitimate complaints if you're actually in the industry and if you're expecting this place that's being held up as a meritocracy to live up to what it's supposed to be. And so that's why I know that a lot of people don't really want to hear it anyway. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't even realize or maybe don't want to pay attention to the fact that Naomi Campbell is in the files and not in necessarily, and it's after he had already been convicted in 2009. And it, like, if you check out the emails, because she's not one that's just mentioned, because that's the other thing. There are people that are mentioned in a very benign way. It's not your fault if somebody's just talking about you, not talking about having met you, not talking about having hung out with you, just talking about you, you know, because that's the thing. When you're going through a person's emails, there's going to be times when they'll mention like a comedian, because there's a few comedians that have been mentioned and some that lets you know too. Because there's a few comedians that actually hung out with him. Like one of them is a comedian by the name of Bobby Slayton. He would stay at his place when Jeffrey wasn't there in New York. This is in the files. You never hear comedians talking about it. And I think it's because a fair amount of them know Bobby Slayton and think he's a good guy. I personally have only met Bobby Slayton in passing like twice. I don't even know if he would remember me, quite possibly. But I don't know if he would remember me by name. But we've met like twice. And he was pleasant enough or whatever. But it does seem a bit off that you would be hanging out with somebody after a conviction like that, and you had to have known. I mean, like, that's the other thing. Like, a lot of this stuff I've known about Jeffrey forever, for a very long time, because there were documentaries and stuff made about it from quite a while back, or like, you know, people that were conspiracy theorists talking about it from quite a while back. So it's like, how do I know? And I'm the most not about any of this type of person, because, you know, I mind my business for the most part, because like I tell you guys, the world isn't going to change because people don't want it to change. That's what a lot of people don't understand, and that's what frustrates people about me, because I stay unbothered. Can't help it. It's the brand. But a lot of people will truly make it seem like they care about things, but then when it gets into the weeds of it and the details of it, they don't want to know. They don't really want to hear. And so that's why I just leave it all alone, because I know people don't want to know. You know, like I said, Naomi Campbell should be a big one because she's an actual supermodel. But then that gets into race for some people, you know, because she's the first, and really even, well, that was part of the thing between her and Tyra Banks, you know, because there's that famous feud. I don't know how many of you watching right now are familiar with the feud between Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell, but Tyra Banks says it was because she was being called the new Naomi. They were saying she was going to be the new Naomi because Tyra Banks was black and Naomi Campbell was black. And so, according to Tyra Banks, she thinks that bothered Naomi Campbell, and that's why Naomi Campbell supposedly bullied Tyra Banks. So, her and Naomi had this whole thing going for quite a while there, which I can understand how that would be a thing, you know. I mean, like, how they could maybe have some friction because of that, because that's the way the industry always did everything, you know, whenever there was two versions of things, even if they were different, because, you know, if you're familiar with Naomi Campbell is absolutely stunning, even to this day, but dark-skinned. And then Tyra Banks is lighter, and so they wouldn't have to really compete, you know, just like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. That's like a music version of it, right? They were pitted against each other for a long time. Who's better, Britney or Christina? Even to this day, you'll see comparisons of Britney and Christina. And it's like they can both exist. They're two completely different things. Like Britney Spears, they were both pop stars, so in that way you could say they were in competition, you know, but by that metric, all pop stars are in competition, you know. But the reason that they single them out is because they were both young women at the same time and both pop stars. But Britney Spears was definitely a lot more straight up pop, where Christina Aguilera was more of a powerhouse vocalist. So they didn't have to compete in any particular way. Even if you're looking at it like on paper type of thing, there's no reason they had to compete, but the industry would pit them against each other. But anyway, my point is, Naomi Campbell, people will start to get like, you know, oh, well, why is it you're going after a black supermodel? And then that's where it's going to turn into a race thing, because black people are going to get mad because they see Naomi, even though Naomi is British and very much hoity-toity, sedity, however you want to put it, you know, she's very much upper crust, became a model because her mom struggled or whatever. She didn't grow up rich, but she started modeling in her early teens, and so she's been rich, and she's known for taking care of her mother. You know, she did love, I don't know if her mother's still alive. I would imagine she is. But I know that they've done interviews together and stuff. Her mother's beautiful as well. But Naomi takes very good care of her mother. And so they became rich once Naomi really took off, which, like I said, was in her early teens. So she spent very little of her life living, and she's definitely never lived like the black experience as far as America's gone, you know, the United States has gone. But a lot of people will get like, okay, well, why are you trying to tear down a black celebrity? So once you start with that, you know, and I'm not singling anybody out for any particular thing, I'm saying everybody, because, you know, supposedly Tom Hanks is caught up in some weird stuff, which I know some people that are watching this video right now are going to get like, Tom Hanks, how dare you? But like, you know, it's, which I don't know if Tom Hanks is even mentioned in the files, but there've just been some, like, if you Google it, you can see. It's like, and I don't know where I'm at on Tom Hanks specifically. There do seem to be some weird things, though. But anyway, my point is, let's say, for the sake of argument, because like I said, all of this is just alleged and stuff like that, but with the Naomi Campbell thing, you can search the files and find the emails, and you can even find videos about it on YouTube. But when it comes to like Tom Hanks, that's a good one because so many people love Tom Hanks. They think he's a great actor. Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, you know, everything he's done. Tom Hanks has a body of work all the way back to just Fun in the 80s, I think it was, Bosom Buddies. Like, Tom Hanks, big, you know, Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks. Undeniable that he's been one of America's icons as far as acting goes. American cinema, let's say. But let's say that you ended up, or people ended up finding out that Tom Hanks is a little bit on the shady side, or a lot of bit on the shady side. Let's just say it for the sake of argument. You know how many people would get mad about that and wish that they didn't know that and not hold Tom Hanks to account? Because they'd be like, I don't want to. I want to continue liking Tom Hanks. And that would happen in politics. That would happen in acting. That would happen, you know, all parts of entertainment, sports, everything. That's how deep all of this really goes. And people do not like or want to know the truth about any of this when it really comes down to it. And so people get frustrated with me because I'm not going to be the crazy person that's pushing this stuff and being like, hey, you guys, check this out and check this out. And people are just getting madder and madder at you because you're basically calling out their heroes. And then at the same time, they're telling you that you're a conspiracy theorist and you're crazy and that you're bitter and that you just trying to take these people down. And it's just like, I don't have time for it. I really don't care. And that's how we end up with the situation that I wanted to talk about with The one of the videos I put out recently, a lot of people are taking it the way that it's meant. It's the one where I talk about the Latino community having, I think I refer to it as having the fatigue. I'll put that down in the what's it called as well if you haven't already seen it. I'll put those two in the pinned comment. I'll put the podcast that's the one about the guy who stole my joke, Tricks. You'll get to hear that. You'll get to hear a better version of it than I'm going to tell you here. And then also in the pinned comment, I'll put the one that I'm referring to right now, which was from just a couple days ago. I'm sure a few of you saw it. It was the one where I was talking about Latinos versus black people, basically, or some in the black community. And I used the clip from the rapper Plies, where he's asking Latinos if we're more wanting to be with white people or if we're more wanting to be with black people. And, to me, that premise is ridiculous because Latinos really are their own thing. Why do we have to either be aligning with black people or trying to be white? Because that's the way that people will put it. People will very much put it as like, you're trying to be white. You'll see that all the time in my comments on social media, which I've really gotten into it with some people lately. And we're going to get into that a little bit too. Because some people get very mad at me in my comments, and that's what they'll always tell me. Whether I'm talking about, because people forget everything. And some people are just coming in so they don't know, what my history has been. But if you've been paying attention to me for even a year or two, you saw about a year and a half ago when ICE was really first starting to crack down, and specifically in California. There was a video I did where I mentioned, and I even showed a couple clips of different people on TikTok that were coming after black people, and they were illegals or Mexicans, Mexican Americans in some cases, that were really trying to come down on black people because they were like, why aren't you guys helping us out? Mexicans have had your backs at different points. And I made a video about it, got a decent amount of views, I can tell you that. But these people don't remember that at that time, I was very clear that the black community owes these people absolutely nothing, even when it comes to me as a Mexican American. Now, if you want to side with me and you're black or white, or it don't matter if you're black or white. Let me not sing right now. I haven't warmed up. But if you want to, support me in different ways, or even my thinking, and no matter what race you are, or what gender, or how you identify, or what your orientation is, because we just agree, that's a whole different thing. You think there aren't black people that I agree with regularly? Of course there are. There's white people that I agree with regularly. There's some of everybody that I agree with regularly. Which again makes a lot of people mad because I'm supposed to be this, because I said this, I feel this way, because I was critical. You could say critical of certain people in the black community on that particular video because I got tired of hearing it. It's like, if you really want to know where Latinos are or why certain Latinos don't vote the way that some black people think that we should vote, then I would be a good person to tell you why that is, because I am the person that does not like it. Jasmine Crockett was the one people were upset about. Well, people were also upset about Kamala. And the truth about Kamala, for a lot of us, was that Kamala really didn't lay out what she planned to do, and she didn't necessarily have the best record as far as being helpful to people of color anyway. And that's not something I look for, but it is something I'll look at if it's people of color that are telling me all these reasons that I should be voting for this person. Well, that's you projecting onto her, because I haven't heard her say that. And when she's saying the things that are supposedly LGBT friendly, and what she's talking about is, hormones and gender affirming care for trans people in prison, or gender affirming care for minors, that kind of stuff. It's like, that's not anything that I'm in support of. So even though I'm LGBT, gay, that doesn't appeal to me. Though to me those aren't good things. Those aren't things that we should be doing or I want people doing, especially on my behalf. And then when it comes to like dealing with the border, I'm so clear about that, like, because I am a United States citizen and what my interest is in my fellow citizens. That's who I care about. So when you're talking about what you're going to do for illegals and how much you're going to help out illegals, well, to me as an American, that really doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't make me want to vote for you, which my mind has been made up since 2015. I'm just a Trump supporter. And even if Trump does some things that I don't always agree with, because he definitely has, which maybe we can get into that on another video, but on this particular video, again, I don't want to get sidetracked on that because that's just, another point in what I'm saying. It's like I still think that what he's done has been very important, and I think that a lot of the conversations that we're having right now need to be had. And yeah, it is quite a bit of what Trump has done that has actually spurred these conversations on or been the catalyst for a lot of these conversations. And so, when I'm seeing so many black people online asking why Latinos vote the way they vote when supposedly that's not in our best interest, there does come a point where I'm like, let me answer this for people and let me prove my point really quick. That the people that are asking this, because like I said, I got a lot of support on that video. I'm not going to pretend. Like, if you scan the comments for yourself, you'll see there's some people that don't disagree with me or that don't agree with me, but there's plenty of people that definitely do agree with me, and people will put their identifiers in their comments. In a lot of cases, they'll be like, I'm black and from whatever, area or whatever, and I know exactly what you're saying and I agree with you, because that's a big part of my thing. Just like when I said that when ICE was cracking down and some Latinos, again, some is very important, and I said some black people throughout that entire video because I wanted to be very clear that I'm not coming for all black people. I'm saying the black people that are asking this question, the black people that want to know why Latinos vote the way that they're vote, or some Latinos, because I can't speak for all, obviously, but why some Latinos vote the way that, as part of that some that you're asking this question of, let me see if I can answer it for you. Because like I said, I wanted one, for the people that are genuinely asking to answer their questions, and two, to prove my point that people really don't want the answer. That a lot of people don't really want to know. They just want to vent. And also, they want to give themselves an excuse to call a group of people racist. And that's what it is in a lot of cases, because people will call me racist and I'll be like, no, actually nothing I said in that video was racist. If you listen to the video, I'm saying that there's a certain amount of the black population that happens to be the same segment of the black population that's asking this question of us, that I can't get on board with what it is they're saying. I can't get on board with their thinking. And I explained why. Because we as Latinos are raised differently than that. A lot of us really are. Where in a lot of cases, I notice that even older black people, some older black people, I'll be very clear in this video too, just anytime I say black people, understand I mean some, a particular group. Because like I said, I got so much support on that video from black people that understood what it was I was saying, that I don't at all think that the whole black community was mad at me or everybody thinks I'm racist or all black people. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like some got upset with me because they really didn't want to hear that, and because they know that what I was saying was true about the fact that some people are raised to believe that all white people are racist against black people and white people are always going to keep you down. And I, as a Mexican American, and the way that I was raised, was I was raised to know that nobody would keep me down. My dad, that's one of the things I remember my dad telling me the most, because in that video I said that my family very rarely talked about racism. It's not like it was never talked about or never mentioned. It was definitely wasn't taboo, but nothing really was taboo in my family. Cursing, I wasn't allowed to curse around my parents, and now I can, because I'm a grown man and they're adults too. I choose not to because I've been in that habit for so long, and I don't see a reason to break it. Every once in a while I'll say a cuss word just because I know that it's the only way to express myself in that moment. I don't cuss at my parents though. I don't cuss them out, but yeah, every once in a while they'll hear me say a cuss word, and sometimes just because I know it would be funny. I know what I'm gonna say is funny, and I know that it's excusable, but I don't make a habit of cussing in front of my parents. But there was no subject that was taboo in my family, so if I wanted to talk about race or that kind of thing, I could, but it just wasn't ever a thing in our family where it was like, we were raised to believe that white people were trying to keep us down, and that I was supposed to dislike white people because white people will always hate me. That wasn't the way I was raised at all. I mean, like, I grew up in a predominantly white town. Now the demographics have changed in that town, but when I was growing up there, it was predominantly white. And like, I was very honest about that in the video too. Like, when I was younger, the racist people that we had were truly racist because they had been raised in the generations where that was just the norm, and so, like, there was that element to it, but it's not anything that we were taught to really hyper focus on or even let be an issue when I was younger. And so, in my family, it's just not something. And so the thing I remember my dad telling me the most, though, because I talked to you guys before about my work history when I was younger. There was the one particular job that I did that was at a grocery store, and I was a bag boy, and I was trying my best to be as good at that job as I possibly could be, even though I know a lot of people wouldn't take that seriously. For me, it was more about my work history. It was more about my work ethic. It was more about showing what I could do, and it was like my first job. So I was very young. Well, technically, my first job was McDonald's. I don't remember what happened with McDonald's. I didn't last there, though. That's the long and the short of it. But yeah, but I didn't get fired. I quit. And I don't remember why. Maybe one day I'll remember the McDonald's story and I'll tell you guys. But it wasn't anything dramatic or whatever. I think it was a matter of, at that time I was living on the west side of Phoenix, and the McDonald's that I was hired at was all the way on, like, the other side of town, and in order to get there I would have had to take the bus, or like something happened with my car, something like that. Anyway, let's not get caught up on that either, because I've got the kind of brain that will try to remember these things for no reason at all. It doesn't matter to this particular story. But the grocery store one was like what I consider my first actual job, because I was taking it serious, and they were not good to me at all, and I wish I'd quit that job sooner. But I really stuck it out for quite a while because, like I said, I was just trying to, do everything the right way. And they weren't good to me at all at that grocery store. But my point is, after I quit that grocery store, then I just got in the habit of, as soon as, because I put up with so much from them, that when I quit that grocery store, then I just got in the habit of, if I didn't like something, I would just quit it. And then I'd find a job like immediately after. Like, I never stayed without a job until I decided to do S work, like, all the way, and like, really I guess you could say commit to that. And then there was no point to me having a regular job because I was making so much money doing that there was no reason for it. But I remember when I went through that phase, because there was a point where it was just like one dead-end job to the next. You know what I mean? For a minute, I was digging ditches for the cable company, or a subcontractor that dug ditches for the cable company. I was doing that for a while in the Arizona heat. That was miserable. Then there was a point where I was doing all the regular. I worked in an adult bookstore for a while. I did Burger King. I did Jack in the Box. I did McDonald's again. And it was like all these jobs. I worked at a bathhouse for a short while, a gay bathhouse just for a very short while. One day I'll tell that story because it's just funny. But, all these things I did. And I remember, because, my dad still was trying to instill in me during that time, because I was just quitting jobs as soon as they would get on my nerves or I didn't like something that they did. I'd just quit, and there were times when one time I was working for a grocery store called Food City, and they had this policy where we had to walk every single person out to their car and load their groceries in the car for them as courtesy clerks, bag boys. That's something that was just part of the job. And if they said they didn't want us to, then we didn't have to, but we had to at least offer. And a lot of people would be like, yeah, because nobody wants to load their own groceries. Well, that particular job, I remember there was this lady that drove like a old school car that had like a trunk that had like a point in the middle of it. And so I was putting her groceries in the back of her car, in the trunk of her car. That's where she wanted them. And the trunk like came down a little bit, at a point when I was loading her groceries in. And there was a point on the in the middle, like where the license plate would be, the well for the license plate would be. And that point, when I turned around, and it was the perfect timing, I was loading some of her bags in, and the trunk came down like right at the right time, and I hit my forehead on that point. And my forehead started bleeding. And it wasn't a lot of blood. It wasn't a big thing, but it was like it hit my head hard. And I got pissed off, and which I didn't let the customer know, that lady. It wasn't her fault, even though it was her trunk, but it wasn't her fault. And I decided I was tired of that job, so I just went ahead and finished loading her groceries in the car. I walked the cart back over to the cart area, and I proceeded to just walk home. I didn't tell them I quit. They ended up calling me. They wanted me to come back to work. They called me like the next day. They apologized to me that had happened. And I was like, yeah, I'm just done. And that's what it was. But my point is, my dad, when I was in that phase, because I would, like I said, I would just get jobs right away. And at first my dad was worried about it because he thought like I was going to like mess up, like my work history type of thing, and I wouldn't be able to get a job or whatever. And I just kept getting them. As soon as I would leave one, I'd immediately get another one, because I wasn't lazy. I just didn't like the stuff that people were trying to do to me. And like I said, I dealt with abuse and I would say literal abuse, at the grocery store. And so, but my dad, he would always tell me, because, like I said, at first he was worried about it. And then he started seeing the way that I would just get a job right after. And one of the things that he would tell me the most was, well, I guess you can't keep a good man down. And so he would always tell me that. And my mom was always on the side of like, yeah, if you don't like something, then don't do it and just go on to the next one. You'll be fine. And so it like, to me, this has nothing to do with race, is my point. It's like, if you're raised, it has everything to do with race if you're raised to believe that race is supposed to be a factor. So people are getting mad at me, calling me racist, or some people are, because they don't understand that for me, it's the opposite. It's like you're raising your people, your children, to believe that there are all these factors that are going to keep them from succeeding. So of course they're not going to succeed, because they've got all the excuses in the world not to succeed. Where the way that I was raised was, no matter what, I'm going to succeed. So I don't really mind if I blow off a couple of things, or I decide a couple of things aren't for me. I will find my way to what it is I need to be doing, or what's going to get me where I need to go. And so it's like these things don't have to hold you down. And so when you're trying to tell me that that's the reason I'm supposed to vote a particular way, is because it's all about racism and the patriarchy and homophobia and all these things that I just refuse to let be a factor in my life. And then people will tell me that I'm privileged for thinking that way. And it's like, how am I privileged for thinking that way? And also, why is it if I choose to side with you and I say that I am downtrodden and the whole world is against me because I have brown skin, because I'm gay, because of these different factors, even the piercings, the tattoos, whatever you want to point out. Let's say that I decide to give up and I join forces with you. Then you respect the fact that I'm a brown person, right? Then that's your main thing about me is I'm brown and I'm Latinx and I'm gay. And so, which I don't use Latinx, but according, the politically correct way of saying what I am, I'm Latinx and I'm gay. Okay, let's say I surrender to that. Then you completely buy me as a minority. You're completely fine with me being under the minority umbrella. But the minute I say that I don't agree with you on these particular things, and I don't think that you have to be held down by these particular things, and the thing that I think is really holding you down is the mindset you have. And I'm not on some Gary Vee or Tony Robbins type stuff. I'm just saying that it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're told your entire life that these are the reasons you're not going to succeed. You're told that you're not going to succeed, then of course you're not going to succeed because that's what you've been told and you believe that. And it's not your fault that you were raised that way. But what does become your fault is when you're an adult and you still choose to believe that. Because there's things that I got told when I was younger that weren't possible. And I've made those things happen. And some of those things I've made happen completely by myself. Some of those things I've made happen with the help of friends. Some of those things I've made happen with the help of family. Some of those things I've made happen with just people believing in me enough and me also believing in myself, and the combination of the two getting me to do what I like. I was raised in a small community in Arizona. I should have never been on television. I've been on Comedy Central twice. I should have never done stand-up in Hollywood and been a paid regular at every club in Hollywood. That should have never happened to a small brown boy gay on top of it, coming from small town Arizona. None of that should have ever happened according to the way that some people think or the way some people see things. But I never saw things that way. And my parents believed in me, and a lot of my friends believed in me, or the friends I decided to keep believed in me. And so these things that have happened to me, if you look at even the statistics for people reaching 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, it's a very small percentage, even though it's a lot of people because there's a lot of people on YouTube. So a small percentage still equates or still equals, a decent amount of people. So I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm part of this, small group, but it's a small percentage that ever gets to 100,000 subscribers. And so that should have never happened. But all of these things have happened. And it's because of my mindset. Even if you look at what my particular fan base would be, a lot of people that follow me are right-wing or conservative at the very least. Well, being brown and tattooed and having all these piercings, according to a lot of people, that should not be my following or my viewers. It just shouldn't be. But that's the reality of it. And it's provable in the comments. So how did that happen? Why did that happen when supposedly these people are so racist and closed-minded and homophobic and hate tattoos and hate piercings? And there's people in my comments that'll even tell me that. Because, like I said, people put their identifiers in my comments all the time, which I'm fine with. I like when people tell me, what they are and why we shouldn't be friends, and then proceed to tell me how much they like my stuff. You'll see it in the comments. Scan the comments of any one of my videos, and you'll see people that are saying, like, one, I just off the top of my head that I just saw today, there was a woman that was like, I'm an older white woman from Canada, conservative, and I know that I should not like your I know that I should not like your content based off of just what your description would be, but I just want you to know that I'm a huge fan and I really like your stuff. I get stuff like that all the time. People will comment sometimes, just by looking at you, I almost passed on the video, but I'm glad I went ahead and gave you a chance. Stuff like that, comments all the time. But Maybe it's also because I come from a very common sense place, which doesn't always mean that I'm right for everybody. Because, like, I definitely am wrong if you're raised that particular way and that's what your thing is. If you want to live in victim mentality, I'm not the channel for you, because I'm not going to feed into that. I don't feed into that with myself. And it's the reason that I've been able to do a lot of things, you know? It's because if you even look at my old school stuff, you know, like there's times where I went through different evolutions where I've talked about different things in different ways. But one thing you'll notice about me is I've never put a lot on that, like where it's like, you know, well, because I'm brown, I shouldn't be doing these things. Like when I became the first ever openly gay comedian to perform in Mongolia, like that's something that's a bit of a, you know, an accolade, you could say. But like for me, I was just there to perform, and yeah, that's the way they build it. And I was proud to be that for them, because a lot of, you know, because Mongolia has a lot more, they're a lot more conservative. So LGBT is new. It's a mistake, guys. But it's new for them, or it was new for them. This was 2017 or 2018, maybe. No, it was early 2019. That's what it was. And so, you know, it was like new for them. And so they wanted to build it that way. And the whole LGBT community in the capital, I forget how it's pronounced. But they all came out to see me, and the U.S. ambassador for Mongolia was there as well. And I gave them a show. It was a really good time. And I was proud to be that for them, because it, like for me, it was saying to the young Mongolian, which when I say young, you know, everybody's over 21 or whatever their drinking age is, because it was at an actual bar, a comedy club. But they were able to see that you being gay or you being LGBT doesn't have to limit you, doesn't have to come with a ceiling. You can do absolutely anything, you know, and that's where I don't mind people using my race in that way, or the fact that I'm gay in that way, because yeah, I do want other people that whatever your supposed vulnerability or your supposed like whatever it is that's supposed to hold you back, it doesn't have to. You can be whatever it is you want to be. And so if you look at me and you take from any part of me, whether it's the piercings, the tattoos, the skin color, the gay, the brown, whatever it is you take from me, if you take that and your actual takeaway from it is, if this guy can do it, take the plastic surgery even. I don't look like everybody. Whatever it is, if you take that and look at that and hyper focus on it and say, if that guy can do it, then I can do it, then I've done my job and stay unbothered.